Palestinian protesters have clashed with Israeli forces over the introduction of new security measures at a holy site in East Jerusalem. It follows a week of escalating tensions in the region with mass prayer protests and several violent incidents. Metal detectors were installed at the site, known as Haram al-Sharif to Muslims and the Temple Mount to Jews, over a week ago. The move came after Arab gunmen opened fire from the shrine, killing 2 Israeli policemen. In Bethlehem, dozens of Palestinians prayed behind models they'd made of the metal detectors. They later set the models on fire. After the protest, Palestinians hurled stones at the Israeli forces who responded by dispersing the protest. Israel's security cabinet has met to review the security measures, but says they're necessary to prevent more attacks.
On Sunday morning, new smart security cameras were installed aimed at detecting weapons carried by visitors who enter the site. Palestinians have already announced their opposition to the installation of security cameras, and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas announced he is halting all security cooperation with Israel for the first time since his assumption of office until all metal detectors be removed from the Temple Mount area.
Tensions are quickly rising all over the Muslim world over newly installed security measures at the Temple Mount following a shooting attack earlier this month that left 2 Israeli police officers dead. Last night, a 17-year-old Jordanian attacked a guard at the Israeli embassy in Jordan. Reportedly, Mohammed Jawada had been hired to carry out some carpentry work in the embassy building, but when he entered, he stabbed an Israeli guard with a screwdriver. Jawada's father is calling him a martyr for Allah after he was shot dead by security forces. The guard is the deputy director of security at the embassy, and he's being treated in a Jordanian hospital. But the story doesn't end there. He's now being held by Jordanian officials for questioning in the ongoing investigation. The Israeli Foreign Ministry points out that he has diplomatic immunity and should then be free to leave, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been in contact with both the guard and the head of the embassy to keep tabs on the matter. Jordanian forces surrounded the embassy following the attack, using tear gas to disperse rioters who had gathered. This is not the only place where Temple Mount tensions have led to violence. On Thursday, members of a Turkish fascist group with ties to Turkish President Erdogan attacked a synagogue in Istanbul, throwing rocks at its windows and threatening to put the synagogue under siege. In response, Israel has closed all embassies and consulates in Turkey.
Israel conducting raids and deploying extra troops in the occupied West Bank after at least 7 Israelis and Palestinians were killed in the worst violence between the two sides in years. The UN Security Council now poised for an emergency session on Monday as a rare joint statement from Russia, the US, European Union, and UN called on both factions to show restraint.
The Arab League is now also getting ready to hold an emergency meeting of their own over the crisis at Jerusalem's Temple Mount. The meeting is currently set for Thursday and was called for by Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi. Safadi tweeted that he had discussed the issue with the foreign ministers of Norway, Germany, France, and Sweden. He then called for the metal detectors at the Temple Mount to be removed, as well as the historic status quo respected, in order to restore calm to Al-Aqsa. Most of the Muslim world claims to see added security measures as a threat. The Arab League yesterday accused Israel of, quote, playing with fire, and that Jerusalem is a red line that no Arab or Muslim will accept violations of.
Pope Francis said today that he was alarmed by the recent violence in Jerusalem. In front of faithfuls in St. Peter's Square, the Pope called for dialogue and moderation to help restore peace.
Dear brothers and sisters, I am following with trepidation the grave tension and violence of recent days in Jerusalem. I feel the need to express a heartfelt call for moderation and dialogue. I ask you to join me in prayer for the Lord to inspire in all sides proposals for reconciliation and peace.
Israeli forces struck a Hamas position in the Gaza Strip with tank fire. That after a rocket was launched from Gaza into Israel overnight. The rocket landing in an open area. No casualties or damages were reported. The launch came less than a day after another rocket was fired from the Gaza Strip towards Israel, also landing in an open space.
The U.S. House and Senate have reached a deal on sanctions for Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Last month, the Senate overwhelmingly passed legislation imposing sanctions that target Iran's ballistic missile program and expand U.S. sanctions on Russia for meddling in the 2016 presidential election. But the bill stalled in the House. Republicans raised procedural concerns over certain bill provisions and asked that it be revised. Leading Democrats accused Republicans of using procedure as an excuse to mask the fact that they're, quote, covering for a president who has been far too soft on Russia. That's because the bill has a provision requiring the president to get congressional approval to eliminate or weaken sanctions on Russia. Now, after weeks of negotiations, during which North Korea's sanctions were added to the legislation, bipartisan lawmakers in the House and Senate have come to an agreement. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy said a vote is expected to happen Tuesday.
The United States is planning to conduct another test of its anti-missile shield to counter the growing threat from North Korea. The Pentagon could launch a THAAD anti-missile interceptor as early as next weekend from a base off the southern coast of Alaska. The U.S. Coast Guard issued a notice advising seafarers to avoid navigating through waters between that part of Alaska and Hawaii from July 29th to the 31st. The U.S. Missile Defense Agency already conducted a successful test of that earlier this month, and the upcoming test is aimed at better addressing North Korea's growing missile threat.
We start with North Korea, where recent satellite imagery shows activity at a shipyard, signaling a potential missile launch, this time from below the water. The latest development comes after the North ignored South Korea's offer for military talks aimed at easing tensions.
Seoul has proposed dialogue with the North, urging the regime to halt its provocations, but activity in Pyongyang suggests it has no plans to stop its missile tests. Recent satellite imagery from U.S.-based North Korea monitoring website 38 North shows a Shinpo-class experimental ballistic missile submarine and a submersible test stand barge have been lined up together. New buildings at the shipyard have also been constructed, leading to 38 North's assessments that Pyongyang could be preparing for a submarine-launched ballistic missile launch.
The United States has commissioned one of its most advanced aircraft carriers to join its Navy. In a ceremony over the weekend, President Trump said the USS Gerald R. Ford will cause America's enemies to shake with fear.
Weighing in at 100,000 tons, the $13 billion warship, named after America's 38th president, can apparently sail for 20 years without needing to refuel. The carrier also has a smaller island that sits further back on the ship to make it easier and quicker to refuel, rearm and relaunch planes. It also has a nuclear power plant designed to allow cruising speeds of more than 30 knots or 55 kilometers an hour. Construction started in 2009 and was to be completed by September 2015 at a cost of just $10.5 billion. The Navy said the delays and budget overruns was because of the ship's advanced technology, including electromagnetic launch systems for jets and drones that will replace steam catapults. President Trump had earlier urged against this as he blamed electromagnetic systems for being too expensive. But he seemed pleased with the finished product as he hailed the Gerald Ford as the pride of the U.S. Navy and American power.
American steel and American hands have constructed a 100,000-ton message to the world. America might is second to none. Wherever this vessel cuts through the horizon, our allies will rest easy and our enemies will shake with fear, because everyone will know that America is coming and America is coming strong.
Now, Iran and Iraq have signed an agreement to boost military cooperation. Iran's Tasnim news agency says the deal was signed by Iranian Defense Minister Hossein Dagan and his visiting Iraqi counterpart Afan al-Hayali in Tehran. The two sides agreed to share experiences in the fight against terrorism and extremism and cooperate in border security as well as military training and support. The Iranian minister hailed Iraq's counter-terrorism achievements, particularly in the liberation of Mosul, and also pledged to continue to support Iraq to re-establish security and stability.
An all-out assault to drive Sunni militants from their last stronghold along the Syria-Lebanon border. Fighters from Lebanon's Shiite militia Hezbollah, backed by the Syrian army, are targeting insurgents from the former al-Nusra Front, which used to be allied with al-Qaeda. The militants have been in control of a mountainous area around Jurud Asal. Hezbollah says its forces have recaptured several strategic points and border crossings. Since the new offensive began on Friday, more than 60 fighters are reported to have been killed, with the majority of the deaths among the Sunni insurgents.
A suicide car bombing in Kabul has killed more than 20 people and injured dozens. It happened early this morning in a mainly Shiite neighborhood of the Afghan capital. The Taliban has claimed responsibility. It comes exactly a year after more than 80 people were killed in a suicide attack in Kabul targeting the mainly Shiite Hazara minority. So-called Islamic State said it was behind that blast, its first attack on such a scale in Afghanistan. The latest explosion said to have targeted a bus transporting government employees. Unrelenting violence in Afghanistan has killed more than 1,600 civilians in the first half of this year.
Libyan authorities are negotiating with other governments to decide what to do with hundreds of bodies of Islamic State militants stored in freezers in the city of Misrata. They've been shipped here from the coastal city of Sirte, where 7 months ago Libyan forces defeated Islamic State. This man from an organized crime unit in Misrata says there are various nationalities, such as Tunisia, Egypt, Sudan, and North Africa. According to the crime unit, the prosecutor general was in talks with foreign governments over repatriation, and they're awaiting a decision on how to proceed, with foreign governments wary of acknowledging just how many of their citizens left to fight as jihadists. In Tunisia alone, officials say more than 3,000 citizens left to fight in Syria, Iraq, and Libya. Libya now left with a sensitive decision on how and when the bodies will be returned.
At least 5 people have been wounded in Switzerland, 2 of them seriously by a man armed with a chainsaw. The attack took place in Schaffhausen near the German border. The small Swiss town was immediately sealed off following the incident as police continued their search for the suspect, who remains on the run. He's been described as bald, around 6 feet tall, with an unkempt appearance. Police have said they are not treating the incident as terror-related.
As the European Union seeks a long-term solution to the refugee crisis, tens of thousands of migrants continue to pour into Italy, setting up makeshift camps in cities across the country. Since January, 110,000 immigrants landed in Europe via the Mediterranean. Saddam from Sudan fled to Italy hoping to move north. I tried to ride with the train, but there were policemen. They said that the ones with no ticket should get off the train. The large numbers of refugees have caused large-scale debates in Italy. The enhanced control of stations and trains by police has also brought many setbacks to refugees. Once they've reached Italy, most refugees should also stay here due to the terrible sharing system. Sometimes the Italian government doesn't take their fingerprints and simply sends people onwards to other European countries. Refugees like Saddam are willing to stay in Italy, but Italian police have recently banned the refugee camp from the station, leaving sleep a problem for the refugees. Austria has repeatedly threatened to close its borders with Italy, saying it will send soldiers to block any migrants trying to head north.
8 people were found dead and another 20 are in desperate conditions after Texas authorities responded to what is being called a horrific case of human trafficking. The people were found in the back of a tractor-trailer that had no working air conditioning. Temperatures had reached 38 degrees Celsius and did not go below 32 degrees until after 10 p.m. The Walmart employee learned of the immigrants' whereabouts late Saturday night when one person left the truck to ask for water. In addition to the 20 people who were taken to local hospitals, another 8 are being treated for heat stroke and dehydration. The driver has since been arrested, but authorities have yet to release the name. According to the San Antonio police chief, incidents like these are not isolated, and he urged residents to alert the authorities in the event that they witness people being transported between vehicles.
Echoes of the bloody anti-drugs campaign in the Philippines as Indonesian President Joko Widodo instructs police to shoot traffickers. The Southeast Asian country is struggling to contain a narcotics crisis. The new order drawing comparisons between Widodo and Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte, who launched a fierce crackdown about a year ago, leading to the deaths of thousands of alleged drug dealers and users. Widodo hasn't ordered extrajudicial killings like the ones taking place in the Philippines, but he is urging cops to kill traffickers who enter Indonesia and resist arrest. The president has faced international criticism for supporting the execution of drug convicts, including 2 Australian men who are among a number of foreign traffickers killed in recent years. Governments and activists have called on Indonesia to abolish the death penalty, but the country's police chief has echoed Widodo's message, saying he's ordered officers not to hesitate when it comes to using lethal force.
Hundreds of people have marched through central Moscow calling for internet freedom. Protesters from various social movements, including the opposition Parnas party, carried posters and chanted slogans against Russia's censorship rules and hardline on what it calls extremist propaganda. Some people also shouted, "Russia without Putin." I came today because I am for freedom of expression and of the internet. These are our ideas of liberty. We need to be here to keep our liberty. And in our country, the internet is the last place where we can express our personal opinion. I think that the goal is to reduce the education and the access to information of the population. And in these conditions, you can make people believe anything you want, that the nation is the best one, the most intelligent one. In reality, it just becomes stupid. Although the protest was officially sanctioned, several people bearing anti-presidential symbols are said to have been detained. Russian officials dismissed accusations by rights groups and Western governments that authorities are increasing efforts to stifle online dissent.
17 employees of Turkish opposition newspaper Cumhuriyet went on trial today accused of supporting a terrorist group. At the central Istanbul courthouse, a large crowd of supporters let off balloons and called for their release. The case is seen by government critics as a further sign that freedom of expression is under attack.
This case is about criminalizing journalism. It's about punishing those who speak out. And if it works here today and this week, they will do it again and again and again.
The journalists are facing sentences of up to 43 years. Former chief editor Can Dündar, who is living in Germany, is being tried in absentia.
I'm proud of my friends in jail, still resisting and defending the paper and their rights to express themselves and defending the truth.
The detentions came amid accusations by opposition parties and human rights groups that Turkey is using the state of emergency imposed following a failed military coup against President Erdogan in July last year to clamp down not only on the alleged coup plotters, but on all government critics.
Well, a big change coming to schools in Minnesota. They're putting in place a so-called transgender toolkit, which advises teachers to call students scholars instead of boys and girls, and instead of a prom king and queen, prom ambassadors. Here's the explanation why. They say schools should not assume a student's name or pronoun. When students are referred to by the wrong pronoun by peers or school staff, students may feel intimidated, threatened, harassed, or bullied. Joining us now with his reaction is Minnesota State Representative Tim Miller, who is fighting actively against this particular measure. Representative, thanks for being here this morning. So, first of all, do you believe the rationale given for this, and how are Minnesotans responding to it?
Well, thanks for having me this morning, Pete. I really feel like common sense has sort of left the room. And the Department of Education is really focusing on something that is not supported by the people of Minnesota.
So what's the agenda here? I mean, are there so many transgendered children being bullied in Minnesota that this is a massive problem that they feel like they need to react to?
Pete, unfortunately, this has been an agenda that has been going on for about 4, maybe 5 years now in Minnesota, and we're told conflicting things. One time I've said there's only a few kids throughout the entire state of Minnesota, so why is someone like me speaking out against these poor kids? But then when I asked why are we putting together very serious, broad, sweeping policy across the state of Minnesota, why are we doing that when there's only a few students? And they say, well, there's students coming up all the time and they're just being bullied, and so we need to put this policy in place.
More than 20 million people are under a severe weather alert this morning throughout the Northeast.
Flash flood warnings were issued in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. This massive system already hammered the Midwest. It toppled trees, overturned cars, and caused widespread flooding. DeMarco Morgan is in Moline, Illinois, where the water is rising. DeMarco, good morning to you.
Good morning to you. As you can see behind me, the Rock River right here is already 2 feet above its flood stage, and it's expected to rise even further. And although the rain may have stopped, officials say their work has just begun. Under clear skies, residents survey the devastation caused by the latest round of severe weather. In Kentucky, homes are found ripped from their foundations. Vehicles swept away in the storm are pulled from water. The rain may have stopped, but in many places, flooding remains a real threat. In Algonquin, Illinois, homeowners race to hold back the rise in water.
It's got to get done.
Not even thinking about it.
Nope. No.
Further west, aerial footage shows the town of Galena completely submerged after the Galena River overflowed. In Wisconsin, where a state of emergency has been declared, the town of Darlington sits empty. All roads leading into town have been closed.
When you get the river going up, I mean, all you can really do is watch it go up. There's not a whole lot you can do to stop it.
Italian authorities have ordered a halt to pumping water out of a lake near Rome following a prolonged drought. Asia, the utility firm which runs Rome's water system, has said that 2 years of lower than average rainfall have dramatically reduced water levels in reservoirs feeding the city.
Da mesi e da settimane si segnala.
For months, weeks, the water level is falling. Now this drop has reached a dramatic percentage, dangerous to the lake itself. So we took this measure that will come into operation in 7 days' time. Earlier this month, the drinking fountains that dot the city were closed in an effort to safeguard supplies. Since then, there's been no let-up in above-average temperatures, with 2017 likely to be one of the hottest on record in Italy.
It's the hottest day in 145 years in Shanghai. Shanghai's meteorological authority has consecutively issued 13 secondary alerts against high temperatures since July 12th. On Friday, the alert turned to red, the first degree, and the temperature rose to a record-breaking 40.9 degrees Celsius. Sunburns have caused the number of patients to double in the hospital.
In northeast China's Jilin province, where a magnitude 4.9 earthquake has been felt. The quake measured at a depth of 12 kilometers beneath the Earth's surface and had an epicenter 14 kilometers from the city of Songyuan. Both the nearby cities of Changchun and Harbin felt the earthquake's tremors. In response, 15 trains have been stopped due to safety concerns. So far, no casualties have been reported. Areas within a radius of 200 kilometers of the epicenter have experienced 36 earthquakes in the past 5 years.
People are staying jittery in Greece as 2 aftershocks hit the country on Saturday night. Just after 8 p.m. Saturday local time, a 4.4 magnitude tremor shook the eastern Greek island of Kos, followed by another 4.6 magnitude earthquake. Hundreds of residents and tourists ran out from homes and restaurants and headed to the town's main square to stay as far away as possible from the buildings. These tremors are the aftershocks of a powerful 6.7 magnitude earthquake that shook the island and the Turkish city of Bodrum that killed 2 people, injuring 500. Those critically hurt were airlifted to hospitals, while experts are assessing the damage to its cultural monuments.
This is Little Sunfish, and it's helping find nuclear waste in Fukushima. It's a remote-controlled robot fitted with 2 cameras, and a recent mission might have found nuclear debris at the focus of the cleanup effort. The Fukushima plant lost power after a tsunami hit Japan's coastline back in 2011. That caused the fuel rods to overheat and melt through their containment vessel. Last week, the bot made a trip into the Unit 3 reactor and took pictures of the damage. Some of the photos appear to show corium, melted nuclear fuel, and other materials that melted with it. It's a pretty big discovery. The ultimate goal is to find and clean up all that melted fuel, which could take as long as 40 years. Decommissioning the nuclear reactors will cost $72 billion, according to an official estimate.